Picture looking into your own father's eyes at your graduation and realizing he's quietly trying to poison you. My heart didn't stop. It shattered the moment I saw him slip that powder into my glass. At my graduation reception, I watched my father casually drop a white powder into my champagne. I kept smiling, stood up, and handed the glass to my sister. She drank what was never meant for her. This isn't just a betrayal story. It's about finding the strength to act when your family becomes your greatest threat. To understand why my parents, Joseph and Eleanor Harris, would do this, you need context. The Harrises weren't warm. My father, Joseph, built Harris Pharmaceuticals into a multi-billion-dollar company. He was ruthless, a man whose rivals often found themselves suddenly disadvantaged. Publicly, though, he was the philanthropist and devoted family man. My mother, Eleanor, came from old money and cared deeply about appearances and the Harris name. Our house looked like a magazine spread, but behind the facade she was cold and sharply critical of me. Then there's Sophia, my older sister. Perfect grades, debate captain, Harvard Business School graduate. She slipped naturally into the family company, and into my parents' constant approval. Her trophies filled our shelves when she spoke. They listened. My experience was the opposite. I earned straight A's, but my achievements barely registered. That's what we expect from a Harris, my father would say without looking up. When I won the state science fair, my mother commented only on my messy hair in the photos. They only attended my events when absence would have been conspicuous. From childhood, my path was charted. Pharmaceutical sciences, an eventual role at Harris, run research while Sophia handled the business side. My objections were background noise. In high school, I discovered environmental science, specifically how pharmaceutical waste harms ecosystems. My father dismissed it as tree-hugger nonsense. College was partial freedom, but tensions escalated. Holidays became a barrage of passive-aggressive comments. Junior year, they pushed harder, sending me job descriptions for the research department. When I secured an internship with an environmental nonprofit instead, they threatened to pull my tuition. I took loans for my last year. I refused to yield. I applied to Northwestern for environmental studies. The fight that followed was intense. He threatened to cut me off. My mother invoked family duty. I stood my ground, arguing I could make a difference outside the family business. After weeks of silence, they relented, with conditions. They'd fund my degree only if I minored in biochemistry and interned at their company each summer. In the months before graduation, the household grew quiet. Calls and texts stopped. Suddenly, they wanted to throw me a proper Harris celebration. Their sudden attention should have been a warning. Graduation morning was bright. I adjusted my cap in the mirror, proud and anxious. My phone buzzed. Car service, 9:30. Outside the auditorium, my father checked emails while my mother critiqued my hair. No congratulations, only criticism. Sophia gave me a small encouraging smile. My friends Taylor and Zoe arrived, my chosen family. Taylor hugged me and whispered, "Your parents still look like they feel something bad whenever they see you." I whispered back, "Some things never change." There's one person they didn't control, my maternal grandmother, Lillian. She was the only family member who supported my independence. A brilliant chemist, she'd been forced into her husband's shadow. Before she died when I was 16, she made me promise to follow my own path. She left me a substantial inheritance and a trust that would open when I turned 23 or graduated, whichever was later. My parents learned about it 3 months before graduation, when their attorney mentioned it accidentally at a family meeting. My father reportedly went white with anger. The trust was ironclad, $12 million, with independent trustees, enough to make me financially independent, and money that would revert to my parents if I died or failed to graduate. Dr. Lewis, my father's research partner and my mentor, approached. "Quite the production," he said. He mentioned closed-door meetings and rumors about irregularities in clinical trials. "Your father's been in meetings for weeks. Be careful," he warned. As we waited, I overheard my parents step aside. My father's voice drifted over. We need to solve this today before it gets out of hand. My mother nodded grimly. She caught me watching and switched to a practiced smile. Darling, we should find our seats. The ceremony blurred past. Names, speeches, the satisfying weight of my diploma. Afterward, a car took us to a rooftop terrace in Chicago. They'd rented the whole space, ice sculptures, champagne fountains, gourmet food, an orchestra. It was over the top. I excused myself and took a less crowded employee restroom. Passing a service corridor, I overheard them. My mother's voice was anxious. Are you absolutely certain this is necessary? Do you want to lose everything we've built? My father hissed about the FDA investigation and irregularities. He said the trust would let me be independent and that I might expose contamination at a West facility. Drug her at her graduation, he suggested. Not to kill, just enough to make her sick. Like food poisoning. Long enough to buy time and move assets before the trust dispersed. If I died before the transfer, the money would revert to them. At the party, I noticed how my parents watched me, not with pride, but with calculating attention. Whenever I moved, one of them subtly repositioned to keep me in view. Sophia pulled me aside. Something's off, she murmured. Dad's asked me 3 times about your plans, and Mom keeps checking her watch. Then my father called for a special champagne toast in 15 minutes, insisting everyone have a glass. He pointed to a specific gold-labeled bottle and said it was for the family only. My skin went cold. My blood turned to ice. The words were monstrous. The biochemist in me processed it clinically, a non-lethal dose that mimicked food poisoning and would not show up on standard toxicology. I slipped back to the main bathroom, hands shaking, composed my face, and went back into the party. Years of manipulation had taught me to compartmentalize. This was different. I watched as waiters arranged flutes. The gold bottle was opened. My father personally handled the glasses. He placed one slightly apart and then offered it to me. I saw a faintly cloudy residue at the bottom, a powder not fully dissolved. He practically forced the stem into my hand. To Danielle, he said, raising his glass, may your future be everything you deserve. The toast felt doubled in meaning. If I refused the champagne, they could try again. I needed proof, and I needed to act. I told Taylor and Zoe to record the toast and keep my father in frame, especially when he handed out the champagne. Taylor raised her phone discreetly. My training kicked in. What compound would they use? Something hard to detect, something from their labs. Symptoms I'd need to watch for: nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, dizziness, respiratory trouble. If I could identify it fast, paramedics could be directed to the right tests. As my father began the toast, I made my move. I stepped forward, smiled, and praised Sophia in front of everyone. She deserves a proper toast too, I said, and offered her my untouched flute. I smoothly took her partially finished glass. My father's public composure cracked into a private horror. My mother's knuckles whitened. To family, I declared, looking directly at my father. Sophia, socially trained, raised my glass and drank deeply. I sipped from hers, maintaining eye contact with my father. He went ash. 34 minutes after the toast, it happened. Sophia seemed fine one moment. The next she pressed a hand to her head and slurred, "I feel strange." Her knees buckled. An associate caught her. My parents rushed over, genuine panic on their faces. My father cradled her head as she mumbled incoherently, her skin grayish, sweat beading on her brow. My mother screamed and mascara streaked her face. Dr. Lewis checked her pulse, elevated and irregular. Someone called for an ambulance. I knelt beside Sophia. "Stay with her," I told my parents. "I'll go down to direct the paramedics." They nodded, distracted. Guests applauded. Conversation resumed. The orchestra played on. I circulated, keeping Sophia in sight. Inside, I fought guilt and fear. I'd swapped glasses, but I'd allowed my sister to ingest what was meant for me. The overheard plan suggested a non-lethal dose. But what if he'd lied? Paramedics arrived. I met them at the entrance. "My sister collapsed upstairs," I said. Symptoms: dizziness, disorientation, irregular heartbeat, tremors. I believe she ingested a toxic substance at the toast. The lead paramedic asked why I suspected poisoning. I said I had a background in biochemistry and was seeing the timing and symptoms. My parents arrived with Dr. Lewis supporting Sophia, and the paramedics took over. My mother insisted on riding with Sophia in the ambulance. My father insisted we all follow. In the elevator, I texted Taylor, "Bring the recording to the paramedics and email me a copy." Taylor replied that she'd sent the video showing me switching glasses. I told her to tell the police everything she saw. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the ER became a crime scene within an hour. Staff, detectives, and police swarmed. I pushed to speak with Sophia's doctor. I explained what I'd overheard and the timing. Dr. Patel, the emergency physician, listened. She described Sophia's symptoms as consistent with certain poisoning: elevated heart rate, confusion, dilated pupils, dry mouth. I suggested they specifically test for cyclopentolate derivatives, a class of modified compounds my father's team had been researching and that wouldn't show up on routine toxicology screens. "And why would your parents want to poison you?" she asked calmly. I answered simply, money and control. I told her about the $12 million trust my grandmother left that would activate next week. That trust made me independent and threatened the family's control, and apparently their assets. Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow at that level of specificity. I explained my basis, the overheard conversation, and my father's connection to those compounds. She took it seriously and ordered targeted tests while they treated Sophia's symptoms. Detectives interviewed staff and separated my parents for questioning. I met Detective Rivera in a small room. She had kind eyes but was focused. She asked me to retell everything. I did. Overheard conversation, seeing my father add powder, switching the glasses, Taylor's recording, and the timeline of Sophia's collapse. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dr. Patel entered with results. Preliminary toxicology shows elevated levels of a modified anticholinergic compound, similar to but not identical to cyclopentolate. It appears to be a research compound, not commercially available. Detective Rivera looked between us. "In plain terms?" she asked. "If I died before then, it reverts to them." They'd also learned the company was under FDA investigation and feared I might expose damaging information. Detective Rivera's face didn't change, but she wrote it down and underlined it. "That's a serious allegation." "I know," I said quietly. "I have the video my friend recorded of the toast. You can clearly see my father handing me a specific glass and then me switching it with Sophia's. You can also talk to Dr. Lewis. He knows there's tension at the company. It's a lab-made drug that mimics severe food poisoning while producing cardiovascular effects," I explained. "Exactly the sort of experimental compound Harris Pharmaceuticals has been developing. Only someone with access to their research facilities would have it." "Will she be all right?" I asked Dr. Patel. "We're administering physostigmine as an antidote," she replied. "Her condition is serious but stable. If we hadn't identified the compound quickly, there could have been permanent heart damage." Relief washed over me. Detective Rivera studied me. "You realize you knowingly allowed your sister to drink what you suspected was poisoned?" My stomach dropped. I didn't know what else to do. I needed proof. I thought it would make someone sick, not fatally harm them. My voice shook. "I made a terrible decision, and I'll have to live with that." Before she could respond, the door burst open. My father stormed in, accompanied by a flustered officer and a sharply dressed man. "This is outrageous," my father yelled. "My daughter is mentally unstable and jealous of her sister. She's made wild accusations for years." "Mr. Harris, step outside," Detective Rivera said firmly. The suited man placed a hand on my father's arm. "I'm Gerald Thorne, the Harris family attorney," he announced. "My client has no comment." Detective Rivera cautioned that Mr. Harris was not under arrest yet, but urged cooperation. She noted there was video evidence of the toast and preliminary toxicology, confirming a research-grade compound in Sophia's system. A commotion in the hallway proceeded Dr. Lewis, arguing with an officer that he was Sophia's family physician and needed to review her treatment. Detective Rivera and I stepped out. Dr. Lewis spotted me. Danielle, thank God, they're saying Joseph tried to poison you. Before I could answer, Dr. Attell appeared. She's asking for you, she said. She's groggy but lucid. My father's face cycled through emotions and then settled into a controlled fury. Danielle has always been troubled, he said, suddenly calm. She was resentful and threatened to damage the family business. I protested it wasn't true, but he continued as if I hadn't spoken, claiming we even held this party to show support and that I repaid them by manufacturing drama. Gerald Thorne placed his card on the table and insisted future questions go through him. After they left, Detective Rivera turned the card over with 2 fingers. Interesting family, she said. You have no idea, I replied, tiredly. In Sophia's dim hospital room, the guilt hit me seeing her hooked to monitors. Her usually composed appearance was disheveled and pale. She opened her eyes as I approached. Hey, I said quietly, taking her hand. How are you? A soft knock announced Detective Rivera and another plainclothes officer. We've received more information, Rivera said. The FBI has been investigating Harris Pharmaceuticals for 6 months for fraud, environmental violations, and falsification of clinical trial data. We've executed search warrants at your family's offices and home. Sophia's monitors beeped faster. Oh my God, she whispered. I signed off on some of those documents. The officer told her to focus on recovery. They'd speak later. Sophia cried quietly. I trusted them completely, she said. I held her hand. They manipulated us differently. Now we tell the truth, I replied. I just reacted. I didn't think, why would he do that? She whispered. I told her about the trust, the FDA probe, and their fear I'd reveal contamination at the West facility. A look of dawning understanding crossed her face. The sealed reports, she said, the disposal records, heavy metal readings. She squeezed my hand. I saw them last month, but I didn't understand. Like I got hit by a truck, she rasped. Then, is it true? Did Dad try to poison you? I nodded, tears filling my eyes. I'm so sorry you drank it instead. The investigation widened quickly. The FBI found emails and documents showing falsified safety data for multiple drugs and environmental tests, proving years of illegal toxic waste dumping that contaminated groundwater. Detective Rivera kept me updated. Lab analysis tied the experimental anticholinergic to my father's private research facility, and he had signed it out 3 days before my graduation. Notes in his office detailed dosage calculations. I worked closely with authorities, providing everything I knew, interviews, records, and context. 2 days later, the Chicago Tribune ran the story, pharmaceutical CEO and wife arrested for attempted murder of daughter. Smaller headlines followed. FBI uncovers massive fraud and environmental crimes at Harris Pharmaceuticals. The family name, once synonymous with success, became shorthand for corporate greed and betrayal. Reporters camped outside our home. I moved in temporarily with Taylor and Zoe. Sophia stayed in the hospital 4 days and was released into our Aunt Patricia's care. Days blurred into interviews and meetings. A week after the incident, Special Agent Donovan met me with photographs spread across the table, a storage unit with boxes of documents, laptops, and temperature-controlled containers labeled with compound names. Do you recognize this place? He asked. I did not. It was rented under your name 6 months ago with a forged signature, he said. My blood ran cold. They'd planned contingencies and a setup in case their initial plans failed. Agent Donovan confirmed the poisoning attempt was Plan C. Other plans would have framed me for espionage or data theft. Evidence of offshore siphoning and fired employees who'd raised safety concerns surfaced. Families filed lawsuits alleging deaths linked to suppressed safety problems. Through it all, Sophia and I grew closer. The golden child facade cracked as she processed the betrayal. I was their puppet, she admitted in one long conversation. Everything I did was to please them. I told her she'd been a shield, Her role allowed them to dismiss me as difficult rather than face their own misconduct. 2 weeks after the incident, our parents were held without bail as flight risks because of overseas assets. Their preliminary hearing followed the next week. Sophia and I walked into a courthouse, buzzing with reporters. The room fell silent. The prosecution showed Taylor's video, toxicology reports, financial records, and a recorded call from my father in detention asking an associate to clean up river samples and calling me the problem child. The judge found sufficient evidence for trial on counts including attempted murder. My mother collapsed in tears. My father remained impassive, jaw clenched. Outside, reporters swarmed. Sophia surprised me when she took my hand and addressed them. "We are cooperating fully and ask for privacy." When a reporter shouted, "Did you know your sister switched the glasses? Were you in on it?" Sophia turned, voice steady and fierce. "My sister saved my life. Our parents tried to poison her. She's carried guilt, but the only responsible people are Joseph and Eleanor Harris. They tried to kill their child for money and to cover their crimes." Relatives reached out, cousins, aunts. Even my father's brother, who had been ostracized years earlier, after whistleblowing. Family history revealed patterns of control and retribution. Sophia and I began untangling ourselves legally and financially. We hired Vivian Santos, a sharp attorney. "Your grandmother's trust is secure," Vivian assured me. The trustees accelerated the transfer given the circumstances. Harris Pharmaceuticals was more complicated. I told Vivian I wanted nothing to do with it. Sophia agreed, though we both felt responsibility to employees and affected communities. Vivian explained that personal assets would be seized for restitution, and some holdings would likely pass to us. We asked for time to decide. As summer unfolded, the case strengthened. Former executives agreed to testify. Environmental tests confirmed widespread contamination, and cleanup costs were estimated above $100 million. In August, agents escorted Sophia and me back through our childhood home. The rooms felt surreal, perfect but empty of warmth. In my father's study, an agent held out a small leather journal. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. I had taken it earlier. Inside were my grandmother Lillian's notes, her concerns about Harris Pharmaceuticals, and a final entry. "I have arranged for Danielle's financial independence. She alone has the conscience and strength to break this family cycle." Tears filled my eyes as I showed it to Sophia. "She was trying to protect me," I whispered. Sophia squeezed my hand. "And you protected me," she said. "That's what family does." 6 months after the graduation party, I stood on the porch of my grandmother's lake house, watching the November sun on the water. The property, part of my inheritance, had become my refuge. The trust transferred 3 weeks after the incident. My first acts were practical, setting up a fund for Sophia's medical care and therapy. Though physically recovered, the psychological wounds ran deep. Sophia had moved in with me a month earlier, selling her condo. She brought 2 steaming mugs and settled into an Adirondack chair. We talked about the past, Grandma Lillian's stories of women scientists and stargazing, and laughed that Mom called those trips dangerous independent. That morning, the prosecutors called. They offered a plea deal, 20 years for Dad on attempted murder plus environmental crimes for Mom, reduced if she testified about the fraud. We sat in silence. "Do you object?" Sophia asked. I watched an eagle circle over the lake. Part of me wanted a full trial to expose everything. Another part wanted closure. We took time to decide. Life began to shift. Dr. Lewis texted, "Environmental job interview went well. They liked your remediation proposal." I smiled and showed Sophia. I'd started contacting environmental firms. Blending my biochemistry skills with environmental focus felt right, using what I knew to help repair the damage. Sophia resigned from Harris Pharmaceuticals and spent months aiding investigators. Now she considered law school, inspired by victim advocates she'd met. The house would be seized. We retrieved only what mattered. Photo albums. Nora, our longtime housekeeper, had taken candid memories, not the staged portraits Mom preferred. "Have you heard from Nora?" I asked. "She's in Florida with her daughter. She sent a care package last week, homemade cookies and a note. She always knew we'd break free eventually. The criminal process continued. My parents publicly denied everything while their lawyers scrambled, but the evidence was overwhelming. Corporate emails showed they'd known about environmental contamination for over a decade. Communities downstream suffered elevated cancer rates and birth defects, data they'd suppressed through secret settlements and manipulated studies. I channeled my anger into action. Using part of my inheritance, I founded an organization to provide healthcare and environmental testing for affected communities. It couldn't undo the harm, but it was a start toward accountability. As media attention faded, we gained some anonymity. I began volunteering with a lake water quality monitoring program and found healing in protecting something beautiful. 7 months after the graduation party, on a cold January morning, Sophia and I sat in court as our parents accepted plea deals. They looked diminished, designer clothes replaced by muted business attire, their air of authority worn thin by detention. My mother wept quietly as the judge read her crimes. My father remained stoic, eyes fixed ahead. Neither looked at us. As bailiffs led them away, I felt a complex mix of sadness, anger, and mostly relief. It was finally over. Outside the courthouse, Dr. Lewis, Taylor, and Zoe waited. Taylor hugged me. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Free," I said. When offered a chance to speak before sentencing, my mother declined. My father stood briefly. I thought he might show remorse. Instead, he spoke of his contributions to medicine, claiming he'd done what was necessary to protect the family business, and that changing regulations had made him a victim. He never acknowledged the communities harmed, the patients affected by falsified trials, or his attempt to poison his own daughter. In his mind, he was justified. In the months that followed, Sophia and I rebuilt in parallel. We sold most of our parents' assets and directed the proceeds into a victim compensation fund. I accepted a role with an environmental remediation firm, focused on cleaning the Harris West facility. Sophia began law school to study environmental law and corporate accountability. We kept the lake house as our refuge, a place of honest memories, separate from our parents' influence. Some nights we sat on the dock, talking late into the dark, grieving what we'd lost, and learning what we could build. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" Sophia asked one evening, while the sunset painted the water. I thought about it. I've accepted what happened and who they are. I released my anger because carrying it was hurting me. Forgiveness, though, implies repentance from them, and I don't think that's coming. She nodded. "Nature versus nurture," she said. "Were they born like this, or did something make them? And what does that mean for us?" I answered, "We have choices, their blood runs in our veins, but their values don't have to. We decide who we become." A year after the party, I spoke at a conference on pharmaceutical environmental impact. I spoke about remediation approaches and the specific work we were pursuing. I glanced into the audience and saw Sophia recording on her phone, Dr. Lewis and our friends beside her. Standing there, I realized I'd found something the Harrises never gave me: genuine belonging based on respect and shared value. My parents had tried to destroy my independence. In resisting and refusing to become their villain or victim, I discovered my purpose. The money was useful, but my grandmother's true gift was believing I could break the cycle. That belief saved me, and now shapes my work. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever made a hard choice to protect yourself from a toxic family? What helped you move forward? I hope my story reminds you that blood does not give anyone the right to harm you, and sometimes the most loving families are the ones we choose. If this resonated, please like and subscribe for more stories of survival and renewal. Remember, the strongest antidote to poison is truth.